A massive prisoner swap in Israel and Gaza under the terms of the deal. The first phase will see 50 Israeli hostages released over the course of 4 days, with 150 Palestinian security detainees in Israel to be freed in response. More detainees could subsequently be released in the same ratio. Israel, though, says that Hamas will eventually be destroyed.
After a 7-hour meeting, all except 3 ministers of far-right Jewish Power Party, the Israeli War Cabinet voted in favor of a deal with Hamas. The deal, a 4-day ceasefire and release of 150 Palestinian prisoners, mostly women and minors, in exchange for 50 hostages taken by Hamas on 7th October, including over 30 children. But PM Netanyahu has made it clear the war will continue.
יש בחוץ דיבורי הבל. כאילו אחרי ההפוגה להשבת חטופינו, אנחנו נפסיק את המלחמה. אז אני מבקש להבהיר, אנחנו במלחמה, ונמשיך במלחמה. נמשיך במלחמה עד שנשיג את כל היעדים שלנו. לחסל את החמאס, להשיב את כל חטופינו ונעדרנו, ולהבטיח שבעזה לא יהיה שום גורם שמאיים על ישראל.
The deal also allows more than 300 desperately needed aid trucks to cross into Gaza. According to Netanyahu's terms, after the 4 days of ceasefire, there will be 1 day ceasefire for every 10 Israeli hostages released by Hamas. Also, Israel will release up to another 150 Palestinian detainees if Hamas releases another 50. The deal negotiated by the US, Qatar and Egypt has been welcomed as a step in right direction after 6 weeks of fighting. US President Joe Biden welcomed the deal on X, while US Secretary of State Antony Blinken and the Qatar PM thanked each other and Egypt for brokering the deal. As the process to execute the deal starts, Israel's Justice Department has published 300 names of Palestinian prisoners being held in Israeli jails. As per the law, ahead of any prisoner release, Israeli citizens must be allowed to make an appeal to the Israeli Supreme Court. But no major hold-ups are expected, given there have been massive marches and protests to bring back the hostages. In Delhi, Kadambini Sharma for NDTV.
Well, joining us now, Tammy Ben-Haim, the Consul General of Israel to South India. Thank you, Ms. Ben-Haim, very much for being with us. Could you tell us a little bit about how the agreement was finally arrived at?
Thank you very much for having me. Yes, it's quite a monumentous time that we're talking. There have been many rumors going on, and we know that there were talks. Egypt, took its role as a go-between, as a monitor, as its regional role very seriously, as we've seen it do in the past as well, including, by the way, of bringing in humanitarian aid from all over the world, including from India, that just sent its second shipment in that arrived a couple days ago through the Rafah crossing from Egypt to southern Gaza. So yes, more humanitarian aid is needed, but almost 25,000 tons of aid has been arriving to South Gaza, to the people of Gaza who need it.
No, absolutely. And
so
that is critical because, there is a pause right now in the fighting. Humanitarian aid is getting in to Gaza. At the same time, there is this swap which is taking place. Could you tell us about the Israeli nationals and foreign nationals who've been held hostage? Do we know who's going to be released? Men, women, children, any idea of ages, any detail that you can share?
Yeah, the details we get. One, there are 238 people who were kidnapped on the 7th of October and brought into Gaza. We sadly, 4 of these women we found in different times, one just yesterday, the bodies or, clear evidence that 4 of these women have died, were murdered out of the 238 that were kidnapped. The rest, we don't know, like the rest of the world, what their condition is, because Hamas has been holding them for 46 days without any word from any of them, except for certain videos that they released. And one of the videos is, as I said, of one of the hostages, Noah, who was murdered at Shifa Hospital, by the way. So we don't know what their condition is. We know that there are 38 children, 10 of them under the age of 5. We know that most likely a 9-month pregnant woman who was in the end of her 9 month when she was kidnapped has most likely given birth. But again, Hamas didn't allow any contact for any international organizations, including the ICRC, the International Red Cross, or anybody to have. We don't know. What is being said is that the first 50 who will be released will include the children, and that they will not separate. If it's a mother with her kids who were kidnapped, they will not separate between the mother and her children. So most likely that the 50 will include the 38, or as Hamas has said, who they can locate of the children of these 38 children. So hopefully these 38 children and their mothers, if there are mothers with them, and the rest will be women. And they're Israeli citizens or Israeli residents.
Ms. Benheim, and there will be hundreds of Palestinian residents or detainees in Israeli facilities who will also be released. Do we have any age profile of those who are going to be sent back in exchange?
Yeah, the list at the moment that our Ministry of Justice has with it, it's 300 women. Women, the oldest one being 59 years old. And the men or boys who are on the list are 18 and under. None of them have been charged with murder. They've been charged with attempted murder. Some of them are still in certain phases of their trials. They were assistants to terror attempts or to terror attacks, but themselves, what we call, don't have immediate blood on their hands. They may have assisted, but they're not the ones who have, God forbid, shot the bullet or put the knife in somebody. But they were assisted, so they're in different levels, as I said. The oldest woman who's on the list is 59. Some of them are from the Palestinian Authority, the West Bank, and some of them are from Gaza.
This isn't, however, the end of the war, is it? You are determined to ensure that Hamas no longer exists.
Absolutely, that there's no threat. It's the two things go together, right? We can't have additional new or future threats from terror organizations from within Gaza. For the past 16 years, Hamas has been controlling Gaza, controlling the people, controlling the government, and controlling the terror activity. And what we saw on October 7th and in the 45 days since then, it's basically that Hamas, the terror organization, has been using the people of Gaza, has been using the territory of Gaza, has been using the international funds that came into Gaza, and obviously also the funding it got from the Iranian regime, has been using all of it for 16 years, have been building up their military terrorist purposes. And they keep saying it. They're saying it. And, their leaders are saying it. We'll do it again and again and again. The charter very clearly states that they will not stop until the Jews are dead and that there's no Israel. So we can't have it happen again. Like any other country wouldn't let such a terror threat, such an existential threat to itself remain right outside or, right at its borders. So absolutely, the ceasefire will happen. And exactly like your journalist said, the first hopefully over 50 for the first 4 days of ceasefire, and then for every additional 10 hostages released. But this was our first and main goal, to release all the 238 hostages. The second goal is to eliminate Hamas's capabilities.
All right, Tammy Benham, I'm afraid we've lost that signal with the Consul General of Israel to South India, but lots of key points over there. It is a day of hope for the families who've been separated, with so many hostages being returned and many of the Palestinian detainees going back as well. I'm now joined by Dayal Erikat, Assistant Professor at the Arab American University in Palestine. Thank you very much, ma'am, for being with us. The differences between Israel and Palestinians are absolutely stark. But do you believe that tomorrow is a small start to what should hopefully be a peace?
Well, I view this deal as a positive step one towards the release of all women and all children and all the innocent civilians who don't deserve to be behind bars and who don't deserve to be hostages. I just want to share with your audience through your respectful network that around 8,000 Palestinian civilians are now behind Israeli military bars. Before October, the number was 5,200 Palestinian civilians. Today, it's around 8,000. 92 of those are women, and around 500 to 600, we're not sure about the exact number, are children. So the guest before me did not mention that those suffer from different diseases and different cancer problems, kidney failures, mental health issues. Those kids, were arrested and detained and kidnapped in very inhumane manners, and they were behind Israeli bars for years now. One very important also information to share with your audience, that beside the positivity of this exchange deal, which I look very positively at, I think it also needs some guarantees. Our experience with the Israeli authorities was not very pleasant in the past years. In the past month and a half alone, Israel had arrested more than 2,500 Palestinian civilians. So what would stop Israel from arresting more Palestinians in the coming days? This is a question that everybody needs to answer. And all the respect and praise and appreciation, of course, and gratitude on behalf of the Palestinian people for all the mediators from Qatar, from Egypt, and from the United States. However, in our experience and in the US mediation experience, brokering experience with the Israelis, they all know that Israel did not even commit to releasing the pre-Oslo prisoners who are still behind the Israeli bars. This is the question that everybody needs to be addressing now. Yes, we want the release of all women, all children, and all innocent civilians who were kept hostage or detained by the Israelis. But yet, we also want guarantees that this will not take place again.
The Israelis also want certain guarantees from Hamas or anybody associated with terrorism on their soil. So that the entire issue of guarantees is what this is really about, isn't it? But let's get to that perhaps later, because I think if we look at tomorrow onwards, the other very welcome change is that there'll be more aid coming in, and that's what millions of people, actually require. Aid not stopped, so that people who are suffering the most get it.
Well, for the past 46 days, we have all been witnessing the war crimes against the 2.3 million Palestinian civilians in the Gaza Strip. Besides the bombardments and the shelling and the killings of around 16,000 Palestinians, 7,000 of them are children, 3,500 are women, 3,000 of those are school students. So the massacres that the Israeli military had committed against the Palestinian civilians for the past 46 days were totally inhumane and totally unacceptable and just cannot be believed in 2023. Yet, there are other people who did not lose their lives, but they lost their homes, they lost all their property, their belongings, they lost their dignity, to say the least. They are deprived from the basic human needs of water, fuel, food, or medicine. 1.6 million of those people are displaced persons inside Gaza, deprived again from the basic needs. So yes, the humanitarian catastrophe that we are witnessing in the 21st century deserves a pause, deserves a break. Yet we had hoped for a complete ceasefire, because in face of the atrocities and the sufferings and the injustices and the war crimes that we are witnessing against the Palestinian people, every human being should have been calling for a ceasefire now, let alone the international community that have been shielding the Israeli war crimes.
But let me ask you this question, ma'am. It is obviously a very, very complicated issue, but the fact of the matter is that terrorists from Hamas attacked Israeli territory. There was a hostage crisis. That's how it all started. I know that so many Palestinian people aren't at all affiliated with Hamas and what it stands for. But how much does Hamas actually control what is happening in Gaza? Isn't Gaza largely controlled entirely by Hamas, which is a terrorist group?
Thank you. I think this is a question that we need to address very clearly in order not to mislead the audiences anymore. In 2005, Ariel Sharon, who was the Prime Minister of Israel then, dismantled the settlements in Gaza. And he withdrew around 6,000 to 9,000, I'm not sure of the exact number, of settlers from Gaza. Mm-hmm. He did withdraw the settlers from Gaza, but he never seized the Israeli control over Gaza. This is the fact that everybody needs to know. The Israeli military occupation continued to control every aspect and every detail of what comes in or out of Gaza ever since 2005 and even before. So the framing of an Israel versus Hamas war is totally rejected. Let's be conscious and, use some reason. In the past 45 days, let me also share through you that in the West Bank, the Israeli military forces had killed around 240 Palestinian civilians. This is not about Israel and Hamas. This is the struggle for the Palestinian people for 75 years under an Israeli military prolonged occupation. This is a settler colonial project that is coming at the expense of the Palestinian blood. They want to forcibly displace the Palestinians, forcibly evict the Palestinians, and now the Israeli military forces are unfortunately backing and protecting the settlers. Settlers are perpetrating terrorism, because you spoke about terrorism.
No, but
the world
ma'am,
needs to be alerted by the settler terrorism.
I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate the historical legacy of this battle, which of this entire issue. But do you not condemn what Hamas did on Israeli territory?
Sir, I condemn the Israeli state organized terror. I condemn every violence against any civilian. I say we deserve as human beings to be viewed as equal. We teach our kids the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Every Palestinian living in Gaza.
But ma'am, we are all human beings and we are all equal and we all have the right to live. And I understand what you're saying.
Not for the Palestinians.
But by that same token, ma'am, do you not also condemn the attack on Israeli territory and what we've seen over there?
No human being deserves to be tortured or deserves to be faced with violence. I'm against violence by all means. I'm a professor of diplomacy, sir.
Yes.
I teach my students negotiations and peaceful tools to conflict resolution. That's why I reject the Israeli military occupation. And I call upon anybody who wants peace in the region and who calls for peace for the two people to start by drawing the borders of the state of Israel, to start by ending the Israeli prolonged military occupation, and to recognize equally the Palestinians' right to self-determination and to statehood. Rhetoric and
the right, ma'am, hopefully, of Israelis also to not have their territory attacked by terrorists. I'm only hearing one side of this, ma'am. We are both talking about peace. But, women, children, mothers slaughtered, in a music thing, hostages being taken away, all of that. That's happened. Why don't you condemn that?
Against any humans. I said that very clearly. So please don't try to take me outside the context.
Okay.
I was very clear. Every civilian, no matter what our religion is, every human being, no matter what our ideology is, deserves to live in dignity and peace and to be protected. Even the international humanitarian law in Article 33 ensured that every civilian is entitled to protection.
Sure.
This is not an obligation only on the international community, but also an obligation on the occupying state itself. Humanitarian aid is also an obligation on Israel in face of the sufferings of the Palestinian civilians.
Well, ma'am, we can keep talking about this, and I'm sure we will, and I appreciate everything that you're saying, your views, but we've run out of time on this. Tomorrow is a welcome day, I think, for all of us watching on, and hopefully it is a small step, but hopefully an important one towards a return to peace. Thank you very much for being with us.
Freedom for all.
Thank you.